Avoidance always collapses when you finally see the truth. You've been searching for clarity in a relationship that keeps leaving you confused. The person you're drawn to, the one who gives just enough to keep you interested, but never enough to feel truly secure. That's the avoidant. And here's the part they never want you to realize. Avoidance only holds power as long as you don't understand your own. Today, I'll help you see what happens when you stop playing their game and why the entire situation begins to fall apart the moment you do. Avoidant people often live with a false sense of control. That false sense is kept alive by one key habit: emotional distance. They seem calm, mysterious, and difficult to understand. They text just enough to keep you curious, then pull back when things start to get close. Their actions are so up and down that you begin to overthink every word, every moment. You question yourself whenever they go silent or seem engaged one day and distant the next. But here's what's really going on. It's not about you. It's about them. Avoidants have learned somewhere in life that closeness feels dangerous. Emotional intimacy feels like being exposed, and that exposure feels like a threat. So they protect themselves by keeping people at a distance. And one of their strongest tools? Confusing the other person, just enough to make them always try to earn love instead of just receiving it. This creates a one-sided dynamic. You're the one chasing, trying, giving more and more. You start feeling unsteady, thinking if you just say the perfect thing or stay patient long enough, they'll finally open up. But this is where the illusion becomes powerful. You think they're in control because they keep pulling away. But the truth is, they're simply reacting to fear. They aren't acting from strength. They are hiding from real connection. Once you begin to see this clearly, everything shifts. Their silence doesn't feel like a punishment anymore. Their unreliability doesn't feel like a personal failure. You stop asking, what did I do wrong? Start asking, why do I keep accepting so little? And that's when the unraveling begins. Avoidants thrive when you doubt yourself. The more you question your own worth, the more you try to win them. But when you understand their behavior comes from fear, not truth, their hold on you starts to fade. You realize they aren't distant because they're wiser or more put together. They're distant because they're scared. Scared of being truly seen. Scared of being known. Scared that love will take more from them than it gives. Once you understand that, you no longer see their distance as attractive or mysterious. You recognize it for what it is, a defense mechanism. And when you do, the entire story changes. The illusion only works when you don't understand the trick. But now you do, and that knowledge is the first step in getting your power back. Your attention is valuable in every relationship, and with an avoidant person, it's the fuel that keeps their behavior going. They may seem indifferent or emotionally removed, but make no mistake, they notice when you're focused on them. Every time you reach out after they pull away, every time you try to fix the gap, every time you replay your messages, wondering how to get a response, you're handing them your energy. They don't need to respond clearly because your chasing says everything. They matter more to you than you do to yourself in that moment. This is how the pattern continues. You feel anxious, they turn cold. And instead of stepping back and caring for your own peace, you try even harder to win their attention. You tell yourself it's love. You think it's patience or being understanding. But more often, it's fear. Fear of being left, fear of being rejected, fear that you're not good enough unless they say you are. Avoidants feed off this imbalance. It confirms their hidden belief that closeness is risky and that they can stay in control by always staying just out of reach. Your attention becomes their emotional cushion. They don't have to show up fully because they know you'll do the emotional work for both of you. But everything begins to shift when you realize that your energy isn't limitless. It's not something to hand out without thought. The moment you pull back the constant flow of attention, when you stop explaining yourself endlessly, when you no longer reach out every time there's silence, you begin to change the pattern. You start sending a different message. I matter too. For the avoidant, that message is unfamiliar and unsettling. They're used to being chased, not challenged. They're used to being understood without needing to return the favor. So when you begin to focus on yourself, when your self-respect speaks louder than your need for their approval, they feel the difference. It disrupts everything, not because you're trying to punish them, but because you're not rewarding their emotional distance anymore. You start to see just how much of your time and emotional energy went into trying to be chosen by someone who never gave you true stability. And with that clarity, you stop pouring your love into uncertainty. You start keeping that attention for yourself, not out of anger, but out of understanding. Because in love, the one who wins isn't the person who gets the most attention. It's the person who values their own attention enough to stop wasting it. Detachment isn't about being cold. It's not about pretending not to care or building walls. Real detachment is about finding your emotional balance again. It's the moment you stop letting someone else's emotional chaos decide how you feel about yourself. With an avoidant, this is powerful because their control lies in your reactions. As long as they can make you worry, pull at your feelings, or make you feel unsure, they feel in charge. But when you detach, you take away their ability to disturb your center. When you're emotionally tied to someone avoidant, every silence feels like punishment. Every late response feels like rejection. You start to think that if you're just patient enough, kind enough, or love them deeply enough, they'll come around. But this belief keeps you stuck, reacting to their every move like you're solving a puzzle. You end up letting them decide whether or not you feel okay. Detachment changes that. It means saying, I see how you're acting and I no longer need to take it personally. It means realizing that someone's emotional distance isn't about your worth, it's about their fear of connection. You stop asking, why do they keep backing away? And start asking, why am I still accepting emotional gaps? This kind of detachment gives you space to think clearly, act with purpose, and most of all, protect your. You stop constantly checking your phone. You stop rewriting your last message in your head. You stop waiting for someone else to choose you. Detachment lets you care, but from a healthy distance, one that honors your dignity. And the most surprising part, the avoidant notices. They feel it when you're no longer circling around them emotionally. The reactions they expected from you, gone. The anxious pull they counted on, silent. And that quiet hits harder than any conversation ever could. This isn't about playing tricks. It's about ending the pattern. When you detach, you stop being part of a cycle where their fear decides your emotional peace. You come back to yourself. You tune into what you need. You stop excusing their distance and start creating room for someone who actually shows up. Detachment doesn't stop love, but it stops love from becoming pain. And once you understand that, you become steady. Not because you've shut down, but because you've remembered who you are even without their approval. Consistency is like a mirror. It shows everything that isn't real. When you show up with steady emotions, clear intentions, and calm clarity, it changes the game. Avoidants aren't used to that. It reveals the inconsistency they've been hiding behind. They work best in confusion, in foggy, unclear spaces, where emotions are unclear and connections remain distant. But when you bring in steadiness, when your actions match your words, when your expectations are clear, when you don't ride the roller coaster of emotional highs and lows, they can't hide anymore. The difference becomes clear. Your calmness makes their instability obvious. Your honesty highlights their defensiveness. Your steady pace makes their pattern of pulling away easier to spot. It becomes harder for them to ignore it and harder for you to make excuses for it. What once felt mysterious now looks like avoidance. What once seemed deep now feels like fear. And that's when things truly shift, not because you confronted them with anger, but because your peaceful presence becomes the truth they can't avoid. Avoidants are used to being matched by anxiety. When they retreat, they expect pursuit. But when you meet their retreat with stillness, you remove their safety net. And that's where your power lives, in your calm, your clarity, and your refusal to trade your peace for someone else's chaos. They expect pursuit when they go quiet. They expect you to fill the silence. That back and forth gives them a sense of control and makes them feel emotionally safe and powerful. But when you don't answer with chaos, when you stay calm and centered, they're not sure how to connect with you anymore. They're faced with a new situation. They either have to grow emotionally or fall completely out of sync. And here's the surprising part. They often do begin to crack, not in loud ways, but through small moments of unease. They feel the weight of their own inconsistency. They start to realize they can't point to your reactions anymore because you're not reacting. You're replying with patience, with clarity, with calm strength. And the more stable you become, the more you take back your emotional ground. Staying steady also teaches you something important. It reveals who someone truly is, not who they might become. You stop holding on to their potential and start noticing their habits. You stop waiting for change and begin observing what they keep choosing. And from that awareness, you make smarter choices. You stop trying to earn love. You just offer it sincerely and let others show if they're able to meet you there. Because when you're steady, their unpredictability is no longer confusing. It becomes your clear answer. Boundaries aren't about trying to control. They're about understanding. In connections with avoidance, the lack of boundaries is what traps you in doubt. You begin to accept mixed messages, disappearing acts, emotional distance, and minimal contact because some part of you hopes that being patient will win them over. But what really happens is this. Each time you dismiss your own discomfort, you send the message that their actions are okay. You show them that you will adjust, bend, and shrink to keep the connection going. That's the price of not setting clear limits. Avoidants are not always being hurtful on purpose. They often don't even know how their actions affect others, but they feel safe with distance and uneasy with emotional responsibility. The more you make room for their fear of closeness, the more they fall into patterns that leave you feeling emotionally empty. This is why boundaries are crucial, not to punish, but to protect. When you say things like, "I'm not okay with unpredictability," or "I need communication I can count on," you're not asking for too much. You're asking for the basics that are needed for any real relationship. And here's the strength of boundaries. They're not demands, they're expectations. You don't plead with someone to meet them. You simply show through your behavior that you're ready to walk away if they can't. Avoidants are used to people adjusting to fit their comfort. They're not used to someone calmly saying, "That doesn't work for me." And meaning, so when you do that, it breaks the cycle. Suddenly they're seeing a version of you that respects yourself and won't settle for scraps. And what's even more eye-opening is how they respond. Some may try harder, others will pull away more, but either way you gain understanding. You stop trying to figure them out. You stop carrying their emotional load and begin focusing on your own needs. Boundaries reveal the truth. In situations that usually live in the dark, they show you what's real, and what's just for show, they make clear who's truly capable of showing up, not only when it's easy, but when it's necessary. More than anything, boundaries shatter the false idea that love means giving up your needs. True love doesn't ask you to set aside your well-being to prove you're worthy. It respects your limits. It values your emotional health. And when you express those limits with quiet strength, avoidants often don't know how to respond because they're not used to someone who puts their self-worth before the chase. Healing is the unexpected turn that changes everything. Not just for you, but for the whole pattern you felt stuck in when you begin to truly heal. To put your emotional health first, you stop seeing love through the lens of fear. You stop chasing value in the eyes of someone who can't fully show up. You stop trying to earn closeness through pain, and that change is powerful. It shakes the very structure that avoidant behavior depends on. Avoidants find comfort in distance. It's their safety zone. They pull back when it feels too real. They go silent when things get emotional, and they depend on your worry to stay in charge. But healing takes away your worry. It gives you understanding. It creates an inner peace that doesn't panic when they withdraw, because you don't see it as a sign you're not good enough. Healing means you start to see your own patterns, why you stayed, why you accepted less, why you kept hoping. But instead of blaming yourself, you meet those patterns with kindness. You begin to see yourself not as broken, but as someone repeating what felt normal. And once you get that, you can rewrite the whole story. Suddenly, you're not pulled toward people who can't connect. What once felt thrilling now feels tiring. What used to upset you now makes you pause and ask, is this even what I really want? The avoidant doesn't know what to do with this new version of you. They were ready to handle your anxiety, not your self-respect. They understood your longing, not your strength. When you heal, you stop reacting, you start responding. You don't need to run after answers because you realize that someone's failure to love you wasn't about your worth. You don't feel the need to prove anything. You just exist in your truth. And that calm confidence is both attractive and unsettling to them. Avoidants might start to feel the limits of their own emotional walls when they're around you. They may notice that you don't need them, the way you once did, that their unpredictability doesn't control you anymore. Some might try to reconnect, others may vanish completely. But your healing isn't tied to either path, because once you've done the deep inner work, everything shifts. They either grow to match your emotional depth, or they fade away, unable to stay in the light of your growth. And this is what I hope you take with you from all of this. The power and balance with an avoidant only feels real when you forget your own strength, when you're lost in doubt, trying to figure out every detail and changing yourself to earn closeness. It feels like they have all the control. But once you start to see clearly, once you notice the pattern, understand the illusion, and stand firm in your worth, the entire structure falls apart. They don't break down because you forced them. They break down because your healing took away the space where their distance once had power. They fall apart because the silence that once made you weak now has no power over you. They break because you finally understood you were never too much. You were just asking the wrong person. You don't need to run after anyone. You don't need to fix things. You just need to see things clearly. And once you do, you don't actually lose them. You lose the part of yourself that believed you had to suffer to earn love. So guard your peace. Stand firm in your values. Choose understanding over confusion. And always remember, you are not difficult to love. You are just finally refusing to accept halfway love. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your willingness to reflect. If anything you heard today felt true, don't just let it pass. Let it move you. You are worthy of true love, steady love, and courageous love. And it all begins with how you choose to love yourself, care for your heart. Thank you, and goodbye.